The emergency siren cut through the morning briefing like a knife. Admiral Beth Torres dropped her coffee cup as red lights bathed the Earth Command Center in urgent warning. 3 days ago, everything had been normal. Human colonies were expanding peacefully into new sectors. Trade routes were secure, and the galaxy seemed vast enough for everyone. Now the holographic display showed a nightmare that made her stomach twist into knots. 12 alien fleets surrounded human space like a noose, tightening around a neck. The massive formations stretched across 3 star systems, their ships arranged in perfect attack patterns. New Terra, home to 8 million colonists, sat trapped behind a wall of alien vessels. Olympus Station, humanity's greatest engineering achievement, was cut off from all supply lines. Even the small mining colony on Helios VII found itself staring down the barrels of enemy weapons. "How many ships are we looking at?" Torres asked her intelligence officer. "Conservative estimate puts it at 3,000 vessels, Admiral. Could be more hiding behind sensor shadows." 3,000 ships. Humanity's entire active fleet numbered barely 400 vessels, and most of those were scattered across a dozen different sectors on patrol duty. The aliens had brought overwhelming force to what they claimed was a peaceful negotiation. The main communication array crackled to life with an incoming transmission. The voice that emerged spoke perfect English, but carried an insectoid clicking that made Torres's skin crawl. "Greetings, primitive humans. I am Lord Commander Thrix of the Hive Lords, speaking for the Galactic Confederation. We come in peace." The irony would have been funny if not for the millions of human lives hanging in the balance. Torres gestured for the communication to be put on speakers so everyone in the command center could hear what humanity was dealing with. "Your species has expanded beyond acceptable limits," the voice continued. "The Confederation has watched your violent tendencies with growing concern. Humans fight too readily, conquer too eagerly, and show no respect for established galactic order. This cannot continue." Torres clenched her fists as the alien continued its ultimatum. The Hive Lords, supported by their crystalline allies called the Veil Empire, had appointed themselves judges of human worthiness. They spoke of humanity like a disease that needed to be contained before it could spread and infect the rest of the galaxy. "Therefore, the Confederation offers you this generous opportunity for peaceful relocation. All human settlements beyond your home system of Sol must be evacuated within 1 standard galactic year. Your people will be relocated to designated reservation worlds where you can be properly supervised and educated in civilized behavior." The word reservation hit Torres like a physical blow. These aliens weren't offering negotiation or compromise. They were demanding humanity accept the high role of a conquered species, locked away on worlds chosen by their conquerors. To facilitate this transition, the Confederation requires immediate surrender of all military vessels and weapons of mass destruction. Human leaders will report to designated re-education centers where they can learn to govern their people according to Confederation standards. Those who cooperate will be treated with mercy. Those who resist will be dealt with accordingly. The transmission included visual data that made Torres's blood run cold. The alien fleets weren't just surrounding human colonies. They were actively jamming all communications. The colonies couldn't even call for help or coordinate their defenses. Families were being cut off from each other across the galaxy while alien ships pointed weapons at their homes. "You have 72 Earth hours to send diplomatic representatives to Neutral Zone Station 7. Come prepared to discuss the terms of your peaceful surrender. The Confederation values all life and wishes to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. We hope you will choose wisdom over the primitive aggression that has defined your species thus far." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Torres stared at the tactical display, watching the slow movement of alien formations as they tightened their grip on human space. These weren't the actions of a species interested in peace talks. This was a carefully planned military operation designed to force humanity into submission through overwhelming intimidation. President Morgan Hayes' face appeared on the emergency council screen within minutes. The leader of Earth looked older than his 60 years, gray hair disheveled and stress lines deep around his eyes. "Admiral, I've been in emergency session with the Colonial Council. Half of them want to negotiate, the other half want to fight. What's your military assessment?" Torres studied the display one more time before answering. "Sir, they've positioned their fleets to cut off our supply lines and isolate our colonies. If this was really about peaceful relocation, they wouldn't need to surround our worlds with warships. They're using our civilians as hostages to force compliance. Can we break through their blockade? Not with conventional tactics. They outnumber us 7-1, and that's assuming we could gather our entire fleet in one place without leaving the rest of human space defenseless." Hayes rubbed his temples, the weight of 8 billion Earth citizens, plus millions more colonists pressing down on his shoulders. "The Colonial Council is split. New Terra's governor is begging us to negotiate. His people are already running, short on medical supplies because of the blockade. But Olympus Station's commander says his people would rather die fighting than live as prisoners." Torres understood the impossible position Hayes faced. Negotiate, and humanity would lose its freedom forever, reduced to a client species under alien supervision. Fight, and millions of innocent people might die in the crossfire while alien fleets bombarded defenseless colonies. "There might be a third option, Mr. President," Torres said slowly. "These aliens think they understand humanity. They've studied our history and decided we're too violent and primitive for their civilized galaxy. Maybe it's time to show them exactly how violent and primitive we can be." Hayes leaned forward in his chair. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" "They want diplomatic representatives. They expect us to send politicians and negotiators, people who will sit down and discuss the terms of our surrender like civilized beings." Torres smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "I say we send Captain Alex Reed and the Defiance instead." "A warship? To peace talks?" "Sometimes, Mr. President, the most effective diplomacy comes from a position of strength. These aliens have surrounded our colonies with 3,000 ships and then asked us to trust their good intentions. I think it's time they learned what human diplomacy really looks like. The decision would change everything. In 72 hours, humanity would answer the Confederation's ultimatum, but not with words." The UES Defiance cut through hyperspace like a sword through silk. Inside the ship's advanced fusion core, matter and energy danced in patterns that would have amazed alien scientists, if they had been permitted to see it. Captain Alex Reed walked through the corridors of his ship, checking on the crew's preparations for what might be the most important mission in human history. Reed had commanded vessels in 3 different wars, but nothing had prepared him for this. The Defiance wasn't just any warship. She was humanity's newest technological achievement, built in secret over the past 5 years using breakthrough discoveries that had revolutionized human engineering. Her hull was composed of adaptive metals that could shift and respond to different types of damage. Her weapons systems incorporated principles that human physicists had only theoretical understanding of just a decade ago. "Sir, we're approaching the neutral zone," reported Lieutenant Sam Davis from the navigation station. "Sensors are picking up the alien diplomatic station. It's big." Reed moved to the main display and whistled softly. The alien station stretched across 30 kilometers of space, a massive structure that looked like it had been grown rather than built. Crystalline towers twisted around metallic frameworks, while organic-looking corridors connected different sections. It was beautiful, intimidating and clearly designed to make visiting species feel small and insignificant. Also detecting approximately 500 alien vessels in escort formation around the station, Davis continued. Mix of Hive Lord and Veil Empire designs, plus some we don't recognize. They're keeping their distance, but weapons are powered. Reed nodded. The aliens were taking no chances, surrounding their diplomatic station with enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. They expected human representatives to arrive in a civilian transport, or at most, a light escort vessel. Instead, they were about to meet 800 meters of cutting-edge human military engineering. "Open a channel to the station," Reed ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of what looked like an organic conference room. Lord Commander Thrix dominated the center of the image, his insectoid features arranged in what might have been surprise or annoyance. Beside him stood a being of living crystal, light refracting through her translucent body in complex patterns. Other alien species filled the background, some humanoid, others utterly foreign. "Human vessel," Thrix's clicking voice came through the speakers. "You were instructed to send diplomatic representatives for peace negotiations. Why do you approach in a warship?" Reed stepped into view of the camera, his uniform crisp and his expression calm. "Lord Commander Thrix, Crystal Sage Lumina, distinguished representatives of the Galactic Confederation. I am Captain Alex Reed of the United Earth ship Defiance. You wanted peace talks. Let's talk." The aliens exchanged glances that somehow conveyed confusion despite their vastly different features. Lumina's crystalline form shifted colors rapidly, creating patterns that Reed's briefing materials had identified as signs of agitation. "Captain Reed," she said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We requested diplomatic personnel, not military commanders. Where are your negotiators? Your ambassadors?" Reed smiled, and there was something in that expression that made several of the alien representatives take unconscious steps backward. "I am the diplomatic corps, and this ship is humanity's answer to your ultimatum." "This is highly irregular," Thrix protested, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "Diplomatic protocol requires civilian representatives for peace negotiations. Military vessels are inappropriate for—" "With respect, Lord Commander," Reed interrupted smoothly, "you surrounded 3 of our colonies with warships and then invited us to discuss our surrender. If we're talking about inappropriate military presence at diplomatic functions, perhaps you should look at the 500 armed vessels you have surrounding this station." The alien conference room fell silent for several seconds. Reed could see them processing this unexpected development, trying to figure out how to handle a situation they clearly hadn't planned for. "Very well," Thrix finally said. "You may dock your vessel in Base 7, but understand that you are here under diplomatic protection. Any aggressive action will be met with overwhelming force." Reed nodded pleasantly. "Of course. We're here for peace talks, after all." The Defiance moved smoothly toward the docking bay, her advanced engines providing precise maneuvering that impressed even the alien observers. As the ship settled into position, Reed gathered his small diplomatic team. They weren't really diplomats. They were his senior officers, each one a veteran of multiple conflicts and trained in combat as much as statecraft. "Remember," Reed told them as they prepared to disembark, "we're not here to surrender or negotiate the terms of humanity's defeat. We're here to deliver a message. These aliens think they understand humans because they've studied our history and decided we're too violent for their civilized galaxy. Today, they learned the difference between violence and strength." The airlock cycled open, revealing a docking bay that looked like the inside of a crystal cave. Alien technicians scurried about, their movements quick and nervous as they stared at the human warship. Reed noticed that none of them approached too closely, as if the Defiance itself radiated some kind of dangerous energy. An escort of alien guards waited to conduct them to the conference room. They were professional and polite, but Reed could see the weapons they carried and the way they positioned themselves to cover all angles of approach. These beings took their security seriously. The conference room was even more impressive in person. The ceiling curved high overhead, embedded with lights that looked like stars. The walls were lined with viewing ports that showed the vast alien fleet positioned around the station. It was clearly designed to make visiting species feel overwhelmed by the Confederation's power and unity. Lord Commander Thrix gestured toward seats that had been hastily adjusted to accommodate human physiology. "Please, Captain Reed, be seated. We have much to discuss." Reed remained standing, his officers flanking him in a loose formation that looked casual but could quickly become defensive if needed. "I prefer to stand for this conversation, Lord Commander. What I have to say won't take very long." "Very well," Lumina interjected, her crystalline structure shifting to a more formal configuration. "Let us begin with the terms of your species relocation. The Confederation has identified several suitable worlds where humans can be resettled under proper supervision." "Stop," Reed said quietly, but something in his tone made every alien in the room fall silent. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're not here to discuss our surrender. We're here to discuss yours." The silence in the conference room stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Lord Commander Thrix's compound eyes reflected the starlight from above as he processed Reed's words. Around the room, representatives from a dozen alien species shifted, uncomfortably, their various forms of communication creating a low buzz of confusion and concern. "Captain Reed," Thrix finally said, his clicking voice carefully controlled, "perhaps you misunderstand the situation. Your species is surrounded. 3,000 Confederation vessels have positioned themselves around your colonies. You have brought one ship to face our entire armada. Surely you cannot be serious about discussing our surrender." Reed walked slowly around the conference table, his footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. Each alien representative tracked his movement with whatever sensory organs they possessed, clearly unsettled by his casual confidence in the face of overwhelming odds. "Let me tell you a story about humanity, Lord Commander," Reed began, stopping, near one of the viewing ports that showed the alien fleet in formation outside. "You've studied our history, so you know we're a young species. We've only been in space for a few centuries, barely a moment compared to your ancient civilizations. But in that short time, we've learned some very important lessons. Crystal Sage." Lumina's form shifted through several color patterns that Reed's briefing materials had identified as skepticism mixed with curiosity. What lessons could a primitive species teach the Confederation? "The first lesson," Reed continued, "is that there's a difference between being peaceful and being harmless. You look at humanity and see a species that fights too much, conquers too readily. But you've misunderstood something fundamental about us. We don't fight because we're violent. We fight because we refuse to be victims." One of the other alien representatives, a tall being with blue skin and elongated limbs, spoke up with a voice like rustling leaves. "Your species has been at war with itself for its entire recorded history. How can you claim to be peaceful?" Reed nodded, acknowledging the point. "You're right. Humans have fought each other for thousands of years. We've had wars over land, resources, beliefs, and sometimes just because we didn't like the way someone else looked. But do you know what all those conflicts taught us? That you are inherently aggressive and unsuited for civilized society," Thrix replied promptly. "No," Reed said, turning back to face the assembled aliens. "They taught us that freedom is worth fighting for. That some principles are more important than safety. That being conquered is a fate worse than death. Every human child learns these lessons from birth. It's part of who we are." The captain activated a small device from his uniform, projecting a holographic display into the center of the room. It showed star charts of human space, with the alien fleets clearly marked around the 3 surrounded colonies. "Which brings us to the second lesson," Reed continued. "Never mistake restraint for weakness. You see humanity expanding slowly into the galaxy, establishing just a few dozen colonies across 30 systems. And you think we're limited by our technology or our numbers. You're wrong." The holographic display shifted, showing detailed technical specifications that made several aliens lean forward in surprise. Energy readings, weapon capabilities, defensive systems, all far beyond what the Confederation had believed humanity possessed. We expand slowly because we choose to, Reed explained. We establish colonies carefully because we want them to be defensible. We keep our military forces spread out because we never want to be caught with all our strength in one place. These aren't signs of weakness. They're signs of strategic thinking. Lumina's crystalline structure pulsed with rapid color changes. You claim superior technology, but our scans of your vessel show nothing extraordinary. Your weapons appear standard, your defense is adequate but unremarkable. Reed smiled, and this time there was definitely something predatory in the expression. That's the third lesson, Crystal Sage. Never show your true capabilities until you're ready to use them. The Defiance you scanned when we arrived isn't the ship that's sitting in your docking bay right now. Before any of the aliens could ask what he meant, Reed tapped another control on his device. The holographic display showed real-time scans of the Defiance, but now the readings were completely different. Energy signatures that had been dormant were now active. Weapon systems that had appeared standard were revealing capabilities that made the alien representatives gasp in their various ways. Adaptive camouflage, Reed explained casually. We learned it from studying cuttlefish back on Earth. Simple concept, really. Appear harmless until the moment you're ready to strike. Thrix's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. Even if your ship is more capable than it appeared, you still face impossible odds. One vessel cannot defeat 3,000. You're absolutely right, Reed agreed. One ship can't defeat 3,000. But we didn't bring one ship because we thought it was enough. We brought one ship because that's all we need. The captain gestured toward the viewing ports showing the alien fleet formations. Your ships are arranged in perfect attack patterns, surrounding our colonies, cutting off supply lines, jamming communications. It's an impressive display of coordinated military power. Very civilized, very organized, very predictable. Reed's expression hardened as he continued. But you made one critical error in your planning. You assumed that because our colonies appeared defenseless, they actually were defensible. You assumed that because we didn't respond immediately to your ultimatum, we were paralyzed by fear. And you assumed that because we sent one ship to your peace talks, we only had one ship to send. The aliens exchanged glances that somehow conveyed growing unease despite their different species. Several of them began accessing their own communication devices, trying to contact their fleet commanders. I'll make this simple, Reed said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. The Galactic Confederation has 6 hours to withdraw all forces from human space. You will not return. You will not establish monitoring stations. You will leave us alone to expand and develop as we see fit. Lord Commander Thrix reared back, his insectoid form towering over the human captain. This is absurd! You dare threaten the combined might of 12-star nations. We came here offering mercy, a chance for your species to survive under our guidance. Now you speak of making demands. I'm not making demands, Reed replied calmly. I'm explaining reality. You wanted to judge whether humanity is too violent for your galactic community. You're about to get your answer. The captain activated his emergency beacon, sending a coded signal that would reach human forces across the galaxy. You see, Lord Commander, there's a fourth lesson that humanity learned from all those wars we fought against each other. Sometimes the best way to preserve peace is to be so prepared for war that no one dares start one. Alarms began blaring throughout the alien station as sensors detected massive energy signatures appearing across the entire region of space. The carefully maintained formations of the Confederation fleet suddenly found themselves facing something they had never expected. You wanted to meet humanity's diplomatic corps, Reed said as his officers moved closer, their hands resting casually on their sidearms. Well, congratulations. You just did. Outside the viewing ports, the first explosions began lighting up the darkness of space. Chaos erupted throughout the alien station as warning sirens screamed and emergency lights bathed everything in pulsing red. Lord Commander Thrix's compound eyes darted between the viewing ports and his communication devices, trying to process. Reports flooding in from his fleet commanders. Crystal Sage Lumina's form shifted through rapid patterns of color that clearly indicated panic, while other alien representatives shouted questions in a dozen different languages. "Impossible!" Thrix clicked rapidly. "Our sensors show your colonies were defenseless. There were no hidden fleets, no secret weapons installations. How are you?" His words were cut off as another explosion lit up the space outside, this one close enough to make the massive station shudder. Through the viewing ports, they could see Confederation ships spinning out of control, their hulls torn open by weapons that seemed to appear from nowhere. Reed tapped his communication device. "Defiance, this is the captain. Time to go to work." The response came immediately from his ship's AI system. "Ares online, Captain. All systems green. Beginning tactical assessment of hostile forces." Even through the station's hull, they could hear the Defiance powering up. The gentle hum that had surrounded the human vessel during docking suddenly became a deep throb that seemed to make the air itself vibrate. Outside, the sleek lines of the human warship began to change as adaptive armor plates shifted into combat. "Configuration! What is that sound?" demanded one of the alien representatives. A tall being with multiple arms and skin that resembled tree bark. "That," Reed said with satisfaction, "is the sound of humanity dropping the pretense of being civilized." The Defiance began moving away from the docking bay, her engines producing a blue-white glare that hurt to look at directly. As she cleared, the station's superstructure, weapon ports opened along her hull like blooming flowers, revealing arrays of technology that no alien force had ever encountered. "All Confederation vessels, this is Captain Alex Reed of the UES Defiance." His voice broadcast across all frequencies. "You have 5 minutes to withdraw from this sector before we start removing you ourselves." The response was immediate and predictable. Thrix barked orders into his communicator, and 500 alien warships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and exotic particle weapons converged on the single human vessel in a display of coordinated firepower that should have vaporized any ship ever built. The Defiance disappeared in a ball of superheated plasma and exotic radiation. For a moment, the alien representatives in the conference room actually relaxed, thinking the threat had been eliminated. Then the energy cloud began to clear, and their relief turned to horror. The human ship hung in space completely undamaged. Her hull gleamed with a faint energy barrier that seemed to absorb and disperse the alien weapons fire. As they watched, the barrier pulsed once and then faded, leaving the Defiance ready for action. "Adaptive shielding," Reed explained to the stunned aliens. "It analyzes incoming weapons and adjusts to counter them. The more you shoot at us, the stronger our defenses become." Another little trick we learned from Earth biology: evolution in real time. The Defiance began her counterattack, and it was unlike anything the Confederation forces had ever seen. Instead of the massive energy weapons they expected, the human ship fired projectiles. But these weren't ordinary kinetic weapons. They moved at incredible velocities, adjusted their course in flight, and punched through alien shields as if they didn't exist. "Railgun technology," Reed continued his explanation as alien ships began exploding around them. "Accelerates projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed. Your energy shields are designed to deflect particle beams and plasma bursts. They're useless against solid matter moving at relativistic velocities." The first wave of Confederation vessels lasted exactly 3 minutes. The Defiance moved through their formation like a dancer, never staying in one place long enough for their targeting systems to lock on. Her weapons fired continuously, each shot precisely calculated to disable or destroy. Some alien ships simply vanished in balls of fire, while others found their hulls cut open like cans. But the true shock came when other explosions began appearing throughout the battle zone, far from where the Defiance was fighting. Hidden human vessels suddenly decloaked, their adaptive camouflage dropping to reveal warships that had been lurking undetected within the alien formations. "You surrounded our colonies," Reed said, watching Thrix's face as understanding dawned. "But you never thought to check whether our colonies had surrounded you." The tactical display showed the truth that was now becoming apparent to the alien commanders. What they had thought were defenseless human settlements were actually carefully prepared fortresses. The mining colony on Helios VII revealed massive weapons platforms hidden within asteroid fields. Olympus Station deployed defense grids that had been disguised as civilian infrastructure. New Terra's orbital facilities suddenly bristled with military hardware. "Every human colony is built with defense in mind," Reed explained as the battle raged outside. "We learn from our history that the best time to prepare for war is when you're at peace. Every civilian station has military applications. Every trade route has strategic value. Every colony can become a fortress when necessary." The alien fleets found themselves caught in a carefully prepared trap. Ships that had been positioned to bottle up human colonies discovered they were actually trapped between hidden human forces. The perfect attack formations that had looked so impressive suddenly became death traps as human vessels emerged from concealment at optimal firing positions. Crystal Sage Lumina's form flickered through colors that Reed's briefing materials identified as terror. "How many ships do you have?" "More than you expected," Reed replied. "Fewer than you fear. The exact number isn't important. What matters is that every human vessel is operated by people who understand that today we're fighting for our survival as a free species." The conference room shook again as explosions got closer to the station. Through the viewing ports, they could see that the battle was turning into a complete rout. Alien ships were fleeing in all directions. Their careful formations collapsed into panicked retreat. "This is Admiral Beth Torres of the UES Sovereignty," a new voice announced over the communication system. "All Confederation vessels are ordered to cease fire and prepare to be escorted out of human space. Any ship that continues hostile action will be destroyed." On the main display, a massive human dreadnought appeared, its hull scarred from previous battles, but its weapons arrays clearly operational. Around it, dozens of other human vessels took formation, each one broadcasting the same message of implacable strength. Reed turned back to the alien representatives, who were now huddled together like frightened children. "The peace talks are over, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to discuss the terms of your withdrawal." Outside, the last of the Confederation fleet was being herded toward the edge of human space by vessels that had proven themselves superior in every way that mattered. The galaxy's established powers had just learned that humanity was not the primitive, violent species they had assumed. They were something far more dangerous, a species that had learned from every mistake, prepared for every contingency, and refused to accept defeat. The remains of the Confederation fleet limped through space under heavy human escort. What had begun as a force of 3,000 vessels had been reduced to barely 800 survivors, their hulls scarred and their formations shattered. Admiral Beth Torres watched from the bridge of the Sovereignty as the alien ships moved slowly toward the edge of human space, each one monitored by human vessels ready to respond to any sign of aggression. The diplomatic station where Captain Reed had delivered humanity's message now served as a temporary command center for the human fleet. Confederation representatives sat in stunned silence as they processed the complete reversal of their situation. Just 6 hours ago, they had been the overwhelming force dictating terms to a primitive species. Now they were prisoners being escorted, away from territory they would never threaten again. "Status report," Torres requested from her communications officer. "All Confederation vessels are complying with withdrawal orders, Admiral. Their weapons are powered down, and they're maintaining safe distances from each other. No signs of regrouping or preparation for counterattack." Torres nodded, studying the tactical display that showed human forces positioned throughout the region. The truth was that humanity had gambled everything on this confrontation. Most of their fleet was now concentrated. In this single sector, leaving other areas of human space temporarily vulnerable. But the gamble had paid off. The Confederation's power was broken, and word of their defeat would spread throughout the galaxy within days. Captain Reed entered the bridge, still wearing the uniform he had worn to the peace talks that had turned into humanity's declaration of independence from alien oversight. His diplomatic mission had been a complete success, though not in any way the aliens had expected. "How are our guests handling their new perspective?" Torres asked. "About as well as you'd expect," Reed replied. "Lord Commander Thrix keeps asking how we hid so many ships from their sensors. Crystal Sage Lumina wants to know why we developed such advanced weapons if we truly wanted peace. The others are just trying to process the fact that their entire understanding of humanity was wrong." Torres activated the main communication system to address the alien representatives directly. Her image appeared on screens throughout the diplomatic station, showing them the face of humanity's military commander, someone who had spent her entire career preparing for exactly this kind of confrontation. "Representatives of the Galactic Confederation," she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had just demonstrated the consequences of underestimating her species. "I want to make sure you understand what happened here today before you return to your respective governments." The main screen showed Lord Commander Thrix, his compound eyes reflecting the lights of the human warships surrounding the station. "Admiral Torres, your species has demonstrated capabilities we did not expect, but this changes nothing. The Confederation will not forget this aggression." "Aggression?" Torres repeated, her eyebrows rising. "Lord Commander, you surrounded 3 of our colonies with warships and demanded our surrender. You jammed our communications, cut off our supply lines, and held millions of civilians hostage while you dictated terms for our species' enslavement. When we responded with force, you call it aggression?" She gestured toward the tactical display showing the current positions of both fleets. "Let me explain something about humanity that your intelligence gathering apparently missed. We prepare for war so thoroughly that we hope never to have to fight one. Every human child learns our history, including the lessons of what happens to species that allow themselves to be conquered and controlled." Crystal Sage Lumina's form shifted through colors that indicated confusion mixed with fear. "But your expansion has been so limited, your military presence so minimal. Our scouts reported that humanity posed no significant threat to established galactic order." "That's exactly what we wanted you to think," Torres replied. "Human expansion appears limited because we choose quality over quantity. We establish colonies that can defend themselves rather than spreading thin across hundreds of systems. Our military presence appears minimal because most of our forces are hidden, disguised, or positioned where you wouldn't think to look for them." The Admiral activated a series of displays showing the true extent of human preparation. Hidden shipyards. In asteroid fields, weapons platforms disguised as communication relays, entire fleets camouflaged within nebulae and gas giants. The Confederation had been monitoring humanity for years without realizing the scope of their defensive preparations. "You made the fundamental error of assuming that because we weren't actively conquering our neighbors, we weren't capable of defending ourselves," Torres continued. "You studied our history and concluded that we were too violent and primitive for your civilized galaxy. But you misunderstood what our history actually teaches." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "Every war humanity has ever fought has taught us something about survival, strategy, and the price of freedom. We learned to never put all our forces in one place. We learned to prepare for enemies we hadn't met yet, and most importantly, we learned that sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to make the cost of war too high for anyone to pay." One of the other alien representatives, the tall being with blue skin who had questioned humanity's peaceful intentions, spoke up with obvious difficulty. "What do you want from us, Admiral? What are your terms for allowing our withdrawal?" Torres smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Our terms are simple. The Galactic Confederation withdraws all forces from human space immediately. You establish no monitoring stations, no observation posts, no advisory missions anywhere in our territory. You leave us alone to develop and expand as we see fit. And if we refuse? Thrix asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Then you'll discover that what you saw today was humanity showing restraint, Torres replied. We could have destroyed your entire fleet instead of just crippling it. We could have pursued your retreating ships back to your home systems. We chose not to because we genuinely prefer peace to war. But make no mistake, if the Confederation ever threatens human colonies again, our response will be significantly less measured. The communication array crackled with incoming transmissions from across the galaxy. Other species who had remained neutral during the confrontation were now requesting meetings with human representatives. The display of military capability had impressed potential allies while intimidating potential enemies. Word of today's events is already spreading, Torres noted, reading the communications reports. The Terran Republic wants to establish formal diplomatic relations. The Free Worlds Alliance is requesting military cooperation agreements. Even the isolationist hegemony is asking about trade partnerships. Reed joined her at the tactical display, watching as the last Confederation ships crossed the boundary of human space under escort. Think they'll stay away? For now, Torres replied. They'll spend the next few years trying to figure out how we did it, looking for weaknesses in our technology and strategy. But they won't risk another direct confrontation until they're absolutely certain they can win. The bridge fell quiet as both officers contemplated the implications of what had just occurred. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy not as a species seeking approval or acceptance, but as one demanding respect. The careful balance of power that had existed for centuries among the established alien civilizations had just been shattered by a newcomer who refused to play by their rules. Admiral, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. President Hayes wants to speak with you directly. Torres nodded and moved to her private communication console. Hayes appeared on the screen, his face showing relief mixed with concern. Behind him, she could see the frantic activity of Earth's command center as staff processed reports from across human space. Admiral, I've been monitoring the situation. Outstanding work, but I need to know, what's our actual position? How much of our fleet did we commit to this operation? 80% of our active ships, Mr. President, Torres admitted. We pulled forces from every sector to make this show of strength possible. If another threat had emerged elsewhere, we would have been in serious trouble. Hayes absorbed this information with the calm of a leader who understood the risks they had been forced to take. And now? Now the galaxy knows that humanity is not to be trifled with. The Confederation's member species will think twice before threatening us again, and other civilizations are already reaching out for partnerships rather than confrontations. We bought ourselves time, Mr. President. Time to build, to prepare, and to establish our place in the galactic community on our own terms. The final phase of the withdrawal was proceeding smoothly. Human ships maintained perfect formation as they escorted the defeated alien fleet toward the edge of their territory. Each Confederation vessel was scanned thoroughly to ensure no weapons remained active, no hidden surveillance devices were deployed, and no attempts at sabotage were made. Reed returned to the diplomatic station to oversee the final departure of the alien representatives. Lord Commander Thrix stood at one of the viewing ports, watching his ships being herded away like defeated animals. His posture conveyed a mixture of anger, humiliation, and grudging respect. Captain Reed, Thrix said without turning around, your species has proven more capable than our intelligence indicated, but this victory has made you enemies throughout the galaxy. The Confederation will not forget this humiliation. I hope not, Reed replied, joining the alien commander at the viewing port. I want every species in the galaxy to remember what happened here. I want them to tell stories about the day humanity said no to being conquered. Because the next time someone decides that humans are too primitive or too violent for galactic civilization, they'll remember those stories. Crystal Sage Lumina approached them, her crystalline form dim and subdued. Your weapons technology, your defensive capabilities, your strategic planning, where did it all come from? Our observations suggested humanity was centuries behind the major galactic powers. Reed smiled, remembering his earlier words about never showing true capabilities until ready to use them. We learned from watching you, Crystal Sage. Every alien, ship that visited human space, every diplomatic contact, every trade negotiation, we were studying, learning, adapting. You taught us about energy shields, so we developed kinetic weapons that could bypass them. You showed us plasma technology, so we created adaptive armor that could absorb and redirect energy attacks. But the coordination, the hidden fleets, the perfect timing, that's what humans do, Reed explained. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Every human colony has military applications because we learned from our history that defenseless civilizations don't stay free for long. Every trade route doubles as a strategic corridor because we understand that economics and warfare are closely related. Every diplomatic contact is also an intelligence gathering opportunity because knowledge is the ultimate weapon. The last Confederation vessel crossed the boundary of human space at exactly 1800 hours, ship time. The massive alien fleet that had arrived with such confidence and overwhelming force was now nothing more than scattered groups of damaged ships fleeing toward their home systems. The balance of power in this region of the galaxy had shifted permanently. Admiral Torres broadcast one final message to the retreating alien forces. To all Confederation vessels, this is Admiral Torres. You came here believing you could dictate terms to humanity. You leave understanding that we dictate our own terms. Take this message back to your governments. Earth stands ready to be a peaceful neighbor to any species that treats us with respect. But to any who mistake our desire for peace as weakness, remember today. Remember that humanity chooses its own destiny. As the human fleet began dispersing back to their patrol sectors, Reed reflected on what they had accomplished. They had faced an enemy with overwhelming numerical superiority and not only survived but achieved total victory. More importantly, they had established humanity's position in the galactic community not as supplicants seeking acceptance, but as equals demanding respect. The communication arrays buzzed with incoming messages from across known space. Species that had never contacted humanity before were requesting meetings. Trade agreements were being proposed. Military alliances were being suggested. The galaxy was reshaping itself around the new reality that humanity was now a major power. But Reed knew this was just the beginning. Today's victory had bought them time and respect, but it had also marked humanity as a species to watch. There would be other challenges, other threats, other tests of their resolve. The galaxy was vast and full of species with their own agendas and ambitions. As the Defiance prepared to return to patrol duty, Reed took one last look at the space where the battle had been fought. Debris from destroyed alien ships drifted slowly among the stars, a testament to the price of underestimating humanity. But there were no human wrecks among the debris. No human casualties to mourn. They had wanted peace talks. Humanity had replied, with a warship. And in doing so, they had secured a peace that would last for generations. The kind of peace that comes not from submission, but from strength, respected by all who might challenge it.